Now, what's the upshot of all this for the original question, which was about simultaneous causation and its application to the origins of the universe? Well, I think your options break down like this. If you're a non-human about causation, let's say you're working with something like the conserved quantity approach, then I think reasonable people can disagree on whether causation can be simultaneous. A lot turns on how you define the causal relation and the sorts of things that can function as causes and effects. However, I don't see how the conserved quantity approach gives you any traction at all in thinking about the origins of the universe itself when you don't have any conserved quantities to start with, right? Now, if you're in the Humean camp, then you'll likely be very skeptical of the very idea of applying causal concepts to describe the origin of the universe. On your view, the application of these concepts is grounded at some level in human agency and human representations. They're not given in the fabric of the world itself. So I can't see how this approach would be helpful either. So I think the situation is grim if what you want to do is use contemporary views of causation to ground a position one way or the other on causal explanations of the origins of the universe. Now, does all of this pose a problem for defenders of the Kalam cosmological argument? I'm not sure it does. I think defenders of the Kalam argument might respond by saying that when they say that anything that comes into being has a cause for its coming into being, they're not really interested in subsuming this notion under contemporary views of causation. What they're doing is more like wrapping some causal language around a more basic metaphysical principle, some version of the principle of sufficient reason, which says roughly that for every event or true fact, there is a sufficient reason why the event occurred or why the fact is true. So what they'll say is that the origins of the universe at some finite time in the past is an event that demands explanation in terms of some sufficient reason. And they won't care so much whether you call it a causal explanation or some other kind of explanation. So I think they'd be happy to grant all of these critiques of causation and causal concepts that we've been talking about, and they'll dig in at a more fundamental level and defend the core metaphysical intuition that underlies the first premise of the Kalam argument. And then the proper response from a critic will be to challenge this underlying metaphysical intuition on its own terms. And that's how I see this playing out anyway.